Every single day, you're making hundreds of economic choices. That coffee you bought, the show you streamed, the ticket for the bus, and behind every single one of them, there's this invisible force at play. So today we're going to pull back the curtain and decode that force. We're talking about the theory of demand.
Have you ever wondered why that flight for a holiday trip costs a fortune, but the same exact flight is a bargain in February? Or why a brand new phone's price seems to just melt away over time? Well, I can tell you, it's not random at all. Think of them like little puzzles, and by the end of our time here, you're going to have the key to solve every single one of them.
And here it is, the master key to all those puzzles. It's a simple word, right? Demand. But, and this is important, in economics, it's not just about wanting something. It's this powerful combo of wanting it, 2, actually having the money to buy it, and 3, being willing to pull the trigger and pay that specific price. That's the trio, the whole shebang that really drives the market.
All right, so let's really get into it. And to really wrap our heads around this whole idea of demand, we're going to start small, like really small. We'll look at the choices of just one person, and then we'll zoom out and see how that builds up to, well, everyone. Okay, let's kick things off with a classic and delicious example, ice cream. So what you're seeing here is called an individual demand schedule, which is really just a fancy way of mapping out one person's choices. Look at the numbers. If ice cream is a steal at 1 rupee, yeah, you might buy 4 of them. But what happens when the price jumps all the way up to 4 rupees? Well, you're probably just going to get 1, right? You see that pattern? As the price goes up, the number you're willing to buy goes down. That simple inverse relationship, that's the key to everything.
Okay, so that's one person. Now, here's where things get really powerful. How do we get from your decision to, the entire market's demand? Well, it's actually way simpler than you might think. All we do is add up what everybody is willing to buy at each and every price point. So if you want 4 ice creams when they're 1 rupiah and your friend wants 5, the market demand at that price is 9. Simple as that. We just add them all up.
And here's what that looks like when we put it on a graph. We literally just take the demand curve for one person, and then we add the curve for the next person, and the next, and so on for every single person in the market. By adding all those individual choices together, we get the big one, the market demand curve. It's the big picture, but it's built from all of our tiny individual decisions.
So this pattern we're seeing, this behavior, it's not a coincidence. It's all governed by one single incredibly powerful principle. And that, right there, is the heart of our story today. It's called the law of demand.
And here it is, in all its glory. This is the core rule of the game. Now, economists have a fancy Latin phrase for this, ceteris paribus. It just means all other things being equal, or holding everything else constant. So, assuming nothing else in the world changes, when the price of something falls, we want more of it. And when the price rises, we want less of it. It's that exact same relationship we just saw with the ice cream.
And when you look at it on a graph, this law is what gives the demand curve its classic, famous shape. That downward slope you see from the top left to the bottom right, that is the law of demand, just in a picture. As the price, that's the vertical line, goes down, the quantity we want, that's the horizontal line, goes up. But you might be asking, why? Why does this happen? Why does this law even work? Well, it really boils down to 3 main effects. First up is the income effect. When a price drops, your money suddenly has more punch, more purchasing power, so you can just flat out afford more stuff. Second, you've got the substitution effect. If coffee gets cheaper, you might think, maybe I'll skip my usual tea today and grab a coffee instead. You substitute. And finally, a lower price just brings new people into the game. Folks who couldn't afford it before now can, so they become new customers. Okay, but remember that fancy Latin phrase, ceteris paribus, other things being equal? Yeah, in the real world, things are never constant. Price is definitely the star of the show, for sure. But there's a whole cast of other factors working behind the scenes, all influencing what you decide to buy.
So first, let's talk about how different goods are related to each other. You have substitutes, right? Like coffee and tea. If the price of tea suddenly skyrockets, what happens? A lot of people are going to switch over and start buying more coffee. The demand for coffee goes up. Then you have complements. These are things that go together, like cars and petrol. If the price of cars suddenly drops and everybody starts buying them, what else are they going to need? Petrol. So the demand for petrol is going to go up too.
And of course, our own income plays a huge role in all of this. For what we call normal goods, think a nice vacation or a new car, the more money we make, the more of it we want. That makes perfect sense. But then there are inferior goods, and this is where it gets interesting. Think about, say, instant noodles. When you get a big raise, you might actually buy fewer instant noodles because now you can afford to buy steak or something fancier instead. So as your income goes up, demand for inferior goods goes down.
All right, pay close attention here because this next part is absolutely crucial. If you can really nail the difference between a movement along a curve and a shift of the entire curve, you will have mastered the core of this whole concept. This is really the big visual payoff.
Okay, first up, a movement. This happens when only the price of the product itself changes. Think about a flash sale on a video game. What happens is a movement along the demand curve we already have. Your fundamental desire for the game hasn't changed. You're just moving from a high price point, say point A, down to a low price point, point B, on the very same curve. But what happens if one of those other factors changes? Let's say you get a big pay raise, or that product suddenly becomes a viral hit. Well, now the entire curve shifts. If it shifts to the right, it means you're now willing to buy more of that product at every single price. Even at the original full price, more people want it now. This isn't a movement along the line, it's a fundamental change in overall demand.
So let's just nail this down one more time because it's so important. A change in quantity demanded, that's a movement along the curve. And it's only, and I mean only, caused by a change in the product's own price. A change in demand, that's a shift of the whole curve. And that's caused by any of those other things we talked about. Your income, changing tastes, the price of a substitute good, you name it.
Okay, so we've got the fundamental rule down cold, right? Well, now it's time for the plot twist. Because like any good rule, the law of demand has some really fascinating exceptions. These weird little cases where the whole thing just gets turned on its head.
Just think about that for a second. It sounds totally backward, doesn't it? How could a higher price make you want to buy more of something? Well, let's dive into the few very rare situations where that's exactly what happens.
So there are a few special cases where the law gets completely flipped. First, you've got what are called Veblen goods. These are super high-end luxury items. Think a rare diamond or a designer handbag, where the crazy high price is actually part of the appeal. It's a status symbol. Then there's the whole world of speculation. If you're convinced the price of gold is going to soar tomorrow, you're probably going to buy more of it today, even as the price is rising. But honestly, the weirdest, most fascinating exception of all is a very rare type of product known as a Giffen.
And this brings us to the Giffen paradox. It's a little counterintuitive, so let's walk through it slowly. Imagine a very, very poor family whose diet is almost entirely made up of a cheap staple food like coarse grain. And maybe, just maybe, they buy a tiny bit of meat once in a while as a treat. Now, what happens if the price of that essential grain suddenly goes up? Well, their tiny budget is completely crushed. That little bit of meat they used to buy, it's completely off the table now. They can't afford it at all. So just to get enough calories to survive, what are they forced to do? They have to stop buying the meat and take that little bit of money and use it to buy even more of the staple grain, even though its price just went up. It's incredible. The price went up and demand went up with it. A true exception to the law.
Wow. Okay, so we've gone from a single scoop of ice cream all the way to market-wide curves and these bizarre paradoxes. Let's zoom back out now and talk about the big picture. Why does any of this stuff actually matter in the real world?
So why does all this matter? It matters because demand isn't just some abstract theory in a textbook. It's a super practical tool that shapes our world. Businesses use this stuff every single day to decide what price to launch a new phone at or when to have a big sale. Governments use it to figure out how things like a tax on sugary drinks might actually change people's behavior. And for you and me, it helps us make sense of the economic story that's playing out all around us every time we go to a store or shop online.
So, the next time you're out and you see a sale, or a product that's suddenly everywhere, or a price that seems to have shot up overnight, you'll know what's going on behind the scenes. You know the rules of the game now. You'll be able to see the movements along the curve, the shifts of the entire curve. You'll see those invisible forces of demand at work. The only question is, what economic story will you see playing out on your next trip to the store?